Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to view Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. So, for this movie, I have to, of course, as per usual, be honest. I honestly felt that Wakanda Forever was a very boring film. I didn't like it at all. I honestly just hated it. How we kind of opened this movie, but not only that, like the end credit scene of this movie also, I didn't like. Uh, for this film, I thought that Ironheart was going to be like a nothing character. They were just going to have her like pop in and pop out, and like at some time later on, they were going to have her be more important somewhere down the road. But no, like they gave like a whole origin story of this character. They even gave her plenty enough time to go on and be painting down her pieces of armor and like putting every piece together piece by piece, it seems, because there's a long stretch of time where both Ironheart and both Shuri are having to come to the conclusions of like, well, yeah, like I guess we should go on and become who we're supposed to be and put on this big battle towards the end of this film, which really just comes off like the Matt Damon, the Great Wall kind of battle sequence. And so a lot of people could be like, wow, like how inventive was that fight sequence on that big, huge, like transport, like boat submarine thing that the Wakandans had. And I would just be like, well, look at the Matt Damon movie, The Great Wall. Not all that inventive. Not like they're breaking new ground, but I guess for a Marvel movie, that has to be going on and breaking some kind of new ground. But so, I, of course, also did not like how they handled just T'Challa's death. I really didn't like it in this movie. I was thinking some kind of big, massive surprise that they had gone on, and somehow before Chadwick Boseman had passed away, I was thinking, like, wouldn't it be cool if they, like, before he died, they just did, like, a couple of green screen scenes, and then somehow were to have put it in the movie somewhere, because Chadwick Boseman was, of course, to go on and do the whole what if thing. Like, what if they could have had, like, Chadwick just kind of do a scene and then just kind of wrote him off that way. But again, like we do have some like surprises in this movie, but not so much that I really overall cared when really looking at this film, as having it be a third of this film is all in subtitles. That's the biggest problem I have with this movie. Is a third of this movie is in subtitles, so I'm having to like read the movie and then go on and watch the action. And I'm like, oh my god. So, like, you have action sequences that have subtitles in it, and I'm like, that is the thing that I've always hated the most about a movie, that while people are fighting, I'm reading subtitles. I had the same complaint about Shang-Chi, and now I'm getting that again with Wakanda Forever. I also thought it was really goofy that Nemour is to be retconned here, and he is no longer an Atlantean. He, of course, is now a Talocon. And here's the problem that we get with that. When we now have to go on and explain these people of who they are, there is no way to easily explain these people besides just calling them, hey, these guys, they're blue, and they look like Wakandans, but they're not Wakandans, obviously. They're somebody else. They didn't have, like, a one word to, like, call them. They couldn't have called them, like, fish people, or, like, they had no way of stating, like, who they were. Like, they couldn't have called them, like, some mariners. They couldn't call them the Atlanteans, because that doesn't work either. because, of course, because of Aquaman existing and Aquaman being Atlanteans, now we just have to state, oh yeah, like, where Nemour lives, he's just in Telecon. He's not in Atlantis. Wow. Um, but that probably also just tells me that I haven't really been up on comic books for Nemour in a while, because why would I be? If I were to have gone on and had like fun comics like Deadpool or a number of other things that I would rather check out much more so than Nemour. I actually did like Nemour, like, besides the whole retconning thing. I liked him in this film. Uh, Overall, like, I could tell that he was a menacing foe whenever I actually got to see him fight people. Took a while to get that to happen, but when we got there, it was like, wow, yeah, Namor is really a threat. Like, he's much more than just a goofy-looking Aquaman guy, where he's gonna bring in whales and like, I thought that there was gonna be some absurd-looking fish or whatever that were gonna go on and like attack the Wakandans or whatever to kind of even the score, as if we were gonna get some weird like Kraken or some goofy like a hidden Atlantean thing. But no, we never get there. We just have all of the Telecons go on and fight against the Wakandans and put up a pretty good fight. So with that said, I didn't like the opening of this movie, and I didn't like the end credit scene. So, like, we end up with a movie that I just overall just state that this film is probably the worst MCU film that I've gone on and seen Marvel do. I even feel like this movie is actually worse than X-Men The Dark Phoenix. I haven't seen X-Men The Dark Phoenix in a long time, but still, I would have that clear consensus. Because at least for X-Men The Dark Phoenix, like, I don't feel like there's a ton of dead time in that film. Even though the events that go on in that movie, I just kind of like, this is so goofy. But, and also they try to, like, retcon some of the past things that F up everything going on in all the X-Men films, but whatever. Just I give up with that. But so, let's go on and let's just go into spoilers about this, because I feel like there's 2.5 hours of this movie, and I'm probably not going to remember every single bit of it, and I'm probably just going to try to do my best to talk about this film and probably just gripe about it the whole freaking time. So I'm sorry, but that's what we have ahead of us. So, with that said, let's go on and where can you go on and see the bootlegged version of this movie? Then you're going to have to go on and realize that there's no subtitles to help you. Because that's what happens. So, when you see a bootleg movie and it's not in English, you can go on and see this movie in a number of different apps. The first one that I'll suggest to you is Doxy, Doxcy. I've been using that app a lot lately. You can go on and see a number of brand new stuff that came out like a day or two ago. Or, you can go on and see a lot of premium access stuff that you would have to go on and pay for everywhere else. You can go onto Doxy and see for absolutely free. Next, I would recommend an app called Play UHD. You can go on to download this app after during fact you see that the logo says Fox HD Movies on it. You can also at some point see Wakanda Forever on that app for free. Black Panther 2, Wakanda Forever. You can also go on to certain apps that kind of lessen in degree of me kind of wanting to state them. Because the first app is 123 Movies, and you would have to go on and find like the perfect version of this, because of course at some point you would probably, I think the logo on this one says Hub on it, so try to look for the 1 to 3 movies it says Hub, or you'd probably just go on and just find the right 1 to 3 movies where the server works or the content can be accessible, because those would be the 2 other problems that I would find through 1 to 3 movies. And the next one would go on to be Yes Movies. I think there are 2 versions of Yes Movies existing on the Google Play Store, but if you probably Google search this, you could probably find a better version of Yes Movies, and you can download that. So I think that would be all of which that I would state you can go and see Wakanda Forever for absolutely free. You can also go into a theater to see it if that's, regardless of my own opinion, you just want to see this because it's like, oh no, like, I think that this movie's going to be great, and then you're going to watch it and you're like, no, he was right all along. What a boring movie this was. Or you'll just go on and like this movie because I just don't, because that's what happens. Sometimes it ends up being certain people's like favorite film, and I'm just like, why? But then I'm like, like that's their opinion. Like, hey, like to each their own. People want to have ignorant bliss in every film, and so with that said, let's go into that double 5 time territory, because about that time, yet again, to of course go into spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil this movie. So in the very beginning of the film, we have Shuri, who's scrambling, running around because, of course, T'Challa is sick. T'Challa is ill. And so Shuri is going on and praying to anybody that'll hear her to save her brother. So Shuri is running around trying to connect balls of DNA to figure out how to cure her brother. And so she's trying to come up with this herb to hopefully save T'Challa. Scrambling to, I guess, get that original Black Panther herb to hopefully save T'Challa. Here's the thing. How did her brother actually get sick? Because more than likely, if Shuri's going to go on and get the purple herb to become Black Panther, maybe there is some bizarre connection with those herbs that kills T'Challa. Not quite sure. I would be concerned about that. But so, we have Shuri just scrambling all around, finding out from the AI that I think is like Leo. I'm not quite sure. I didn't hear that name, even though it comes up frequently in this film. But we have some AI character now. So Shuri ends up going on and is to get like a 29% like effectiveness of what she's going to print out, which is this herb. So Shuri prints out this herb, and all of a sudden Shuri turns to see Ramonda, that is to now to tell Shuri that T'Challa is dead. So they end up going on and putting a whole like funeral together. They go on to like send like T'Challa out to get I think he ends up getting like put into a ship and then getting like sent off. So we go on to have everybody like feeling the loss of T'Challa. They end up having this big mural, and hopefully that mural is from this movie is going to stay there wherever this thing was forever. That like whoever was to paint that mural, hopefully it wasn't one of those just set piece things that they just took down. I hope that that stays there forever, or like Marvel or Disney or whatever like takes that mural and puts it in some like museum or something and keeps it forever, because that would be freaking great. So we have, of course, Shuri that is working like crazy on these exosuits, and she's trying to build all this stuff besides her building herself seemingly a Black Panther suit. So Ramonda is going on and talking to Shuri and is asking Shuri, it's like, well, hey, like, how did how is it that people are kind of taking on the exosuits? And Shuri is telling Ramonda that's like, well, like Okoye had some like input, and Okoye hated it. Okoye hates how it looks. And so the funny thing of it is that every time like Okoye is to talk about this thing, it's like, man, how is it that how is it that this exosuit is getting uglier? And Shuri's just like, well, like you're gonna be wearing it in this movie some point, so suck it up. She's not changing how it's gonna look. At some point, I'm sure in a sequel movie, they're going to go on and make it look drastically different, or they're going to go on and make it look sleeker or thinner or whatever. But anyways, so Shuri is to be with Ramonda, and Ramonda is to tell Shuri, it's like, well, hey, like, remember what day it is? And Shuri's just like, ah. And so, excuse me, Ramonda tells Shuri, it's like, well, hey, you need to like remember, like this is like the day of your father, and that we need to go on and take a break. So Shuri's like, well, like I'm busy, and Ramonda's like, no, like we're taking a break, we're going off. So because we had Ramonda that goes off to speak with the the U.S. Secretary of State and the French Secretary of State, and she's in the UN, and she's the representative of Wakanda, and come to find out, while Ramonda is talking to these Secretaries of State, we turn around and have a Wakandan research outpost that ends up getting invaded by this military force. And when we think that this military force is going to get what they came for, all of a sudden we have Okoye with a bunch of her warrior women behind her going on and decking all of these guys. And Okoye goes on and like arrests all of them, knocking them out. And Okoye is noticing one of the women is to like have this weapon that isn't a spear, and so Okoye is going on and talking to Anika and be like, well, hey, why do you have this weapon here? And Anika is just like, well, like this weapon's really effective. It's like, well, yeah, but it's not a spear. So we go on and have all these guys getting turned in by Ramonda, and so she's stating that probably these guys are somehow attached to any of these people in this UN, because these guys, of course, were military, and so Ramonda wants to know who it is. So, but fast track now back to Ramonda and Shuri. Now, like at this bonfire, just kind of relaxing. And so we have Ramonda trying to talk to Shuri about T'Challa and how, like, Ramonda is getting these conjuring moments of T'Challa. And so Ramonda is asking Shuri, it's like, well, like, how do you see your brother? Like, or when you conjure him, like, is it moments of you being, like, happy, or is it moments of, like, chaos? And so Shuri doesn't really answer, but instead we end up going on to, of course, have Shuri meet up with Nemour. Uh, and so the reason why that happens is because we have so many freaking scenes that I have to go on and just peel back and just be like, okay, here, here, here. So we go on to have these military people who are both Smitty and Dr. Graham that are going on and doing this underwater mining uh, thing in the Atlantic Ocean that is, of course, by with the U.S. So we have Smitty and we have Dr. Graham that goes on to like as if this Leviathan, like I had just seen this movie Leviathan with Peter Weller, and like we had these like big guys in these like massive underwater suits. So we have these two uh, people that go down in these massive scuba suits, and they go down in the water, and all of a sudden they start to see these like phantom jellyfish, and at some point when one girl is to start talking to the other diver, she realizes that this guy's air hose was like ripped from him, and he is now missing, and his signal is lost. So all of a sudden, the girl starts freaking out because she's going to be next. She ends up dying, and like her signal is lost. And so now we have all of uh, the telecons, who are all the fish people, who start getting to this ship and start attacking everybody, and we have this weird bizarre like sound being put out that is forcing everybody to jump off of this ship to splash in the water to fall to their deaths, because I guess that's weirdly like some kind of like psychic like thing that is forcing all these people to fall to their deaths without them realizing it. They're just forced into it. Like there's some fish or there's some thing that is going on and putting forth this signal. And Dr. Graham is starting to realize this, so she's like, "Hey, put in these things that are gonna like earpieces to kind of like clog your ears so you won't get this signal." So both of them, both of them, excuse me, both of them end up going out to try and fend off the telecons, to have them think at first that this is Wakandans because they're actually going after vibranium. And so, because they're mining for it, even though it's like much more by the U.S. border, still like we have, I guess, the Wakandans who are kind of policing the vibranium anywhere, because we have the U.S. and the French Secretary of States that are all talking about like, well, hey, like we thought that you guys would go on and give up the vibranium a little bit more, but it seems like you guys aren't doing that at all. And so Ramonda is just like, well, yeah, like we're not just going to give this up so easily, and we're not going to just like share, because like immediately Ramonda ends up stating that her like son had died, and so like every bit of the vibranium is stuff that she feels that they need to defend like Wakanda. So that's what they're kind of putting their stock in, is vibranium. So Smitty and Dr. Graham end up going into this helicopter, and come to find out there seems to be some kind of telecom thing that ends up going on to take this helicopter and is kind of forcing it down. So we don't quite exactly see what happens with Smitty or with Dr. Graham, but we have to, I guess, assess or assume that they get killed. That's what we have to just naturally jump to the conclusion. So, because now they end up having to go on to then go after the technician, the person who came up with being able to have Smitty and Dr. Graham be able to find a way to mine for vibranium. And come to find out, we have Nemour that comes to Shuri and Ramonda, excuse me, and are to state that Nemour wants this person who came up with a way to mine for vibranium, and he wants this scientist, and he wants the Wakandans to hand this over to him because, of course, they're, of course, surface people, and he's not, technically. So, come to find out, we have Shuri that is to find this equipment that the Americans were to have, and so Shuri is just like baffled by it. She's like, wow, like this can really go on and find vibranium, like this weird goofy aquatic equipment. So we now of course have Shuri that has a job to do, and she of course goes on with Okoye, and so we have Ramonda that isn't really excited about like Shuri going with Okoye, but she's going anyways. So we have Okoye that goes with Shuri to find where, of course, Everett Ross is. And so we have Everett Ross, who is a state that the people that were working on that project, the people who died, was actually friends of his. And so Everett Ross is to go on and tell both Okoye and Shuri where this girl is because he has this information, but then he's kind of withholding it from anyone else who is to kind of have this case where the feds are kind of getting involved. So we have Okoye and we have Shuri go on and find this girl at Cambridge, and she of course is getting paid to help this guy with his experiment. So Shuri and Okoye are looking at this girl and seeing that she has an iPhone, and she's like, oh, does she have an iPhone? Like how like behind the times is this girl? Because of course, like with Wakanda being like the most high tech of high tech, like they have like this absurd technology, and for anybody to have gone on and had like common items like an iPhone, it's like, oh, what a pitiful existence that they live in. And I think that is kind of funny. So Shuri and Okoye follow this girl to find out where she lives. And so Shuri ends up coming first, and then Okoye comes afterwards. So Shuri's mentioned to Okoye that she thinks that she can blend in with everybody, where Okoye is to, of course, have this bald head that, of course, has to have like makeup on it, and it doesn't even look right. So Shuri goes on to talk with Williams, with Riri. So Shuri goes on and states about the machine that Riri had built, and Riri is like, well, yeah, like I just did it as this joke and this and that, and like just somehow like it ended up in the military's hands. Like Riri's like, well, yeah, I didn't know what happened with this thing. Like, it's not like Riri had gotten this big fat payday from all this. So, and more than likely, if she was to go on and build this thing, I'm sure that the college was to probably get a good portion of that money, that cheddar. So Riri ends up going on to find out that her experiment was to become this big thing, that now Shuri needs Riri's help to uh, have her either be handed over by the Telecons, or to either have Shuri go on and kind of like have her rebuild this machine. So we have Riri that has Okoye come into her place, and so since Okoye is to show up with this spear, we have Riri that is starting to throw things at Okoye without even thinking about it. She's just grabbing these small appliances like these fans and these whatever, and starting to chuck them at Okoye, and Okoye is looking at Shuri, and she's like, I like this girl. Like, she's not even thinking about it. She's just tossing these things at me, even though, like, I'm skilled enough to just bat these things away. So, by the time that we have Riri go on with Okoye and Shuri, to then have Riri showcase, like, where she works at, come to find out Riri is also working on another gadget that she's been working years upon, and that, of course, is to basically be the kind of the test run of what eventually becomes her Ironheart armor. She never ends up getting called Ironheart in this whole entire movie. I guess it's just suggested, but really, we have this character that is trying as drastically as possible to look not anywhere close to Ironheart, or even have any kind of like mock kind of suits that look like an Ironheart like thing, trying to be so different. So, come to find out, we have Riri that is having the feds come into, of course, where Riri is working at. And so we just had Riri, who had this this kind of blueprint of this machine in like in this just kind of opened area that probably anybody could have gone into. Shuri and Okoye are both like upset about how like this thing could have easily been found. So they go on and they grab this and they run off with it because, of course, the feds are now coming to get to them. So Shuri is now in this motorcycle. Okoye is driving off in this car, and we have Riri, who is in her like her suit, let's just state. So we have the feds that are coming after the three of these people. So come to find out, we have a drone that is to be spotted, and it's tracking all three of Shuri, Okoye, and Riri. So Riri Williams has to go on and fly way up in the sky to where the air is very thin and shoot down this drone. And then by the time that she gets up that high, she really is losing a ton of oxygen. She has like 15% oxygen left into her. And so Riri shoots this drone down and it is falling. And then by the time that she almost falls and hits the ground, she immediately has her power come back on, and Riri is now back in control. So it's kind of like the icing thing for Iron Man. So we have Shuri and we have Okoye, and they're driving with these vehicles, and we go on to have the Talakans. We have Atuma and we have Nemour that are wanting to get to this girl, so they end up deciding to like attack both Shuri and Okoye with their vehicles and whatever to like get this girl. They're like, "Hey, where is this girl? Like, we need this girl. Like, don't you realize that? Don't you realize how important she is?" So we end up having Shuri that ends up getting taken down pretty easily, and Riri ends up going on and like she doesn't last very long with all of her tech stuff. So we have a Koye that is to have to go on and fight off uh, the Telecons as best she can, and so we have a Koye that is to take down a pretty decent number of these guys and women, and we get to where Okoye is fighting Atuma, and it seems to be going well for Okoye, but then Okoye ends up getting like taken down, and she ends up getting like pushed off into this water, and so Atuma and Nemour end up taking both Shuri and Riri, and end up kind of taking them down uh, to the underwater city. So Okoye, of course, goes back to Ramonda and is a state that she had failed in keeping Shuri safe. So Ramonda is to now just be ticked at Okoye, so much so that like Ramonda is telling Okoye, like, you're fired. Like, you're done. Ramonda is to mention all the times that Okoye has failed, even to the point where Ramonda is to state that when Okoye was with Killmonger and Ramonda was running off with Shuri and Nakia to try and save their kingdom, to try and save T'Challa, and that also, like now, like Ramonda is realizing that Okoye has failed to save the princess, has failed to save Shuri. Like Ramonda's like, you know what? I've seen enough. I've seen enough failure from you, and I've seen too many mistakes. Like, you're done. So Ramonda ends up going to Nakia. Nakia, who probably a lot of people don't remember who this character is. From the first Black Panther movie, she was to be in love with T'Challa. It seems that they were going to get married at some point. It seemed that at some point they were going to have a baby. It seems that at some point you probably need to go on and watch the end credit scene of this movie. So, because they do goofy things with this film, they have to do some goofy crap. Because I don't like the end credit scene, but they do it anyways. So, Ramonda talks to Nakia, and since Ramonda can trust Nakia, because what other defenses do they really have to really trust here? Ramonda goes to Nakia and is state, like, well, like, I think Nakia can go on and, like, figure out where Shuri is and get her back to me, because I can trust Nakia. So, Nakia goes on and is to figure out where, at some point, Nemour and his people are. But let's go on and let's focus on the Shuri Riri thing, where, of course, they are at the Telecon. So, and then we'll go on and we'll get to some of the Everett, Ross, Valentina stuff, if I'm even stating that right. So, we go on to of course, have Shuri, who wakes up and she of course is to be taken care of by the Telecons. So we have Shuri that is to get to talk with Nemour. Nemour ends up giving Shuri this nice necklace that seems to have like pure vibranium in it. And Nemour goes on and tells Shuri about his origin story, which I honestly like. I liked, like, really, like, I hated the fact that Shuri was to have gone on and done the whole like guided tour of Telecon, and how she had to go in that big massive scuba suit and be on this tour. And I thought, I was like, man, this is such a waste of time. But when Nemour finally goes on to explain to Shuri about his origin story, I'm like, okay, I'm all ears, even though it's a fairly simple origin story. So, like Shuri and her herbs, it seems that the uh, the Telecons were to have gone on and had issues breathing. For some goofy reason, they could not go on and like survive on the surface. They took this herb, and that just led them forcibly into the water to where somehow they were to grow gills. But Nemour, who is different from all of his other people, because when they were going through this mutation, Nemour had been a baby in his mother's womb. So that's why Nemour has wings on his feet compared to everyone else, because he just has like a different mutation than everybody else does with the Telecons. So we go on to have Nemour become the underwater baby. So Nemour, as he gets older and he's been under the water for a long time, when finally Nemour's mother dies, Nemour decides to finally take his mother's body and bury her to the surface, because that's the one wish that his mother had. So Nemour goes on to go to the surface, and come to find out, when they go right back to where they originally were, we have this kind of like enslavement farm where we have these guys like whipping these guys and beating them and forcing them to do all this labor. And so Nemour turns around and just like wipes out this whole like farming place, this whole like environment. And so one of the people go on and state that Nemour is to be the man who will not be loved. And so Nemour is like, you know what? I like that. Like, I like that name. Thank you for giving me that, because that just tells me I should never go on to the surface again and have you see my face. Because, like, I'm completely fine with spending the rest of my life underwater. So F all of y'all, right? So Nemour goes on and explains his origin story, which probably is the most interesting thing about this film, but then is to forcibly go back into the water. But the only reason why Nemour is to show his face to the surface dwellers again, because that whole like underground or underwater mining thing ended up causing him to just be like, well, hey, like, these people are wreaking havoc like on my underwater like environment, so I'm gonna go on and tell you guys to like stop all this. So after Shuri hears out this story, she then goes on and takes a tour, and so we have Shuri that goes on to tell Nemour that she cannot give up Riri Williams. And Nemour is like, well, you do realize if you do not give up this girl, then this will lead to a war. And Shuri's like, well, that's what it's going to lead to, then that's what it's going to lead to. So Nemour is like, well, okay then. Like, we're going to need to go to war then. So we have, of course, Nakia that invades the uh, the Talakans, and so Nakia ends up killing one of the Talakans, one of the women, and Nakia finds Shuri and finds Riri, and so when Nakia grabs Shuri and Riri after Shuri has gone on and done talking with Nemour. Here's the goofy thing though. Nemour goes on and has to have Shuri in that huge, massive, like scuba diving gear or whatever, because otherwise, like, Shuri will go on and like have her body crushed and like her she'll bleed out and whatever. And but Nakia doesn't have to have a huge scuba diving suit on because I guess what she's wearing is good enough. Seems so goofy to me. And also, we have what Nakia is taking to like swim up to the surface. Again, like there is no problems there. None of these people are at all wearing these massive scuba diving suits to protect them from the pressure. I'm so confused. So, we have Nakia that takes Shuri and Riri, and Shuri is to state to Nakia that since one of the Talakans were to be killed off here, Shuri is stating that that is an act of war. And Nakia is like, well, like, too bad I've already killed this person. We've already crossed that bridge. Now we just have to go on and walk the rest of the way, so to speak. So they go on and they go to the surface. They end up getting a ship to kind of like suck them in and whatever. So let's go on and talk about the Everett Ross situation and Valentine. So after, of course, both Shuri and both Riri were to have gone on and been attacked by the Talakans, and then they were taken. We had Everett Ross and we had Valentine that go on and are with the FBI agents, and they're kind of looking through this case. They're just kind of like, okay, like there's a lot of unusual stuff here. So it seems that both Valentine and both Everett Ross have had a history together, and it seems that at some point they seem to have been married, because I think Valentine ends up stating with Ross that like, hey, we're gonna talk about like our marriage, like our former marriage, because Everett Ross is going on and calling Valentine by her work name, by her being a director, and Valentine's like, well, hey, you can drop all the pleasantries and all the like the titles and whatever, like just because we know one another. But then eventually, once like Valentine is catching Ross in a lie, because we have Everett that goes on to find Shuri's beads at the crime scene, and so he's starting to use these beads to call Ramonda to kind of give her updates and kind of check in. And then Valentine catches Everett. I'm like, well, hey, like, you're using these beads to go on and like call the Wakandans, like tell me that I'm lying because I've bugged you, and like I know that you're doing this. And Everett's like, I don't know what you're talking about. as Everett is calling his supposed wife when really it's Ramonda. So Valentine ends up getting ticked off at Everett, but this kind of just goes nowhere. So, as well as like Everett being like used through the rest of this film for some goofy reason. So, we go on to now have Shuri and Ruby getting back with the Wakandans, and so we don't really at all have like Shuri like thinking right out of the gate. It's like, hey, we should probably prepare for war because I think the Atlanteans are coming, or the Talicons, the fish people. We just have like Shuri just like scrambling and trying to figure things out, and like what are they gonna do next? Like what can they do? Yada yada yada. So we go on to have the Talicons invade Wakanda. They end up starting to have these bombs that release like this massive thing of water. I'm like, oh my god, that is so cool. But so, not only that, we start to see that Wakanda is starting to be having tons and tons of water because Wakanda is starting to flood. And so I'm like, all right, that's cool. So we have Nemour that just starts flying in and starts just taking out all of these Wakandan ships that are kind of flying by. And so Nemour ends up going for the throat. And so Nemour is to find that Ramonda is to have Riri. And so Nemour is to drown where Ramonda and Riri are with these like watered bombs that end up having like the whole building start to like crumble and collapse and whatever. And so now Ramonda and Riri are like falling down into this water, and Ramonda ends up like waking up, and she's like, "Oh yeah, like I should get out of here, or otherwise I'm going to drown." But she ends up seeing Riri sinking even further. So Ramonda grabs Riri and then just starts trying to swim as quickly as possible. But it seems that by the time both Ramonda and Riri surface, and Shuri and everybody is to try to go on and save Riri and Ramonda, it seems that for Ramonda, they had got there too late. Ramonda is now dead. So Nemour is now telling Shuri and everybody, it's like, well, hey, like this is an act of war, like you guys are gonna suffer the same fate, so like see you later, bye. Or see you later, because you're gonna die. So they go on and they have plenty enough time to bury Ramonda. And so now, like, Shuri is talking with M'Baku, and like M'Baku is coming up with a clear consensus that maybe they should go on and evacuate Wakanda and just have like Wakanda like all be like transported to where M'Baku kind of has his people at. So they quickly try to evacuate like Wakanda as if this is going to be like Thor Ragnarok all over again, where it's going to like, what are they going to do? Like sacrifice Wakanda to Nemour and his people, and because that's the only play that they can do. So Shuri ends up taking the time with Riri to come up with the Ironheart suit. But not only that, we finally have Shuri that realizes that she needs to become Black Panther to defend Wakanda. And because we had like Shuri who was fighting it through the whole movie, where she is really just thinking that like, well, isn't that like an old relic thing? Like, do we really need a Black Panther anymore? But it's like, but the city is defenseless. What do you need then? Like, you don't have like an Iron Legion defending Wakanda, and like we just have Shuri that's building these exosuits. For what reason? I don't know, because they don't know what to do. Wakandans don't know how to defend their own city. They don't know what the heck that they really need to do here. Because, of course, Shuri doesn't know, because she's just tech girl. She just knows how to build things. She doesn't know how to use these things to help out her people. So, Shuri goes on to finally decide, okay, like, I'm going to become Black Panther. I'm going to go on and recreate this herb with the help of the DNA of T'Challa, and so on and so forth. So, we have Shuri that makes this herb, and now she has to take it and realize that she's going to have to lay down. And Naki is asking, like, Shuri, it's like, well, should I bury you like your brother was? And Shuri's like, no, because I want you to like be here if I go on and I like completely die. You might have to defibrillate me. So they go on and they give Shuri the herb. And so when Shuri goes into the afterlife to speak to like the one person, like I would have been hoped so much so that this scene would have just been that we'd have had like Chadwick Boseman in like a CGI'd thing, and he just talks to Shuri, and that would have been like a really great moment. But instead, we come to find out that there is also a moment here that I did technically like. Because instead of having Shuri, who is to be met by family or anybody, even Ramonda, like instead, Shuri is met by the enemy. Shuri was met by Killmonger. I was like, oh my god, Killmonger! He's back! Technically, in a way of which that I was like, okay, like this is cool. Like I don't think they got the hair right, because the hair doesn't look like how he looks in the Black Panther movie, but like F it, I guess they're just like, well, like in the afterlife, hair can grow. I guess is their plan. I don't know. I don't really get that. So we have Shuri that is talking to Killmonger, and so Shuri, it seems, just really wants to go after Nemour to get revenge. And so Killmonger is talking to Shuri. It's like, well, hey, like, if all you want to do is just get revenge, then, like, anybody can go on and be Black Panther. Like, how about I go on and be Black Panther for you? And so Shuri ends up coming back and waking up. And so Shuri, of course, ends up becoming Black Panther. And so she ends up going and talking to all of the like the heads of all of the tribes to see what they're gonna go on and what they're gonna do next, what their kind of clear consensus all is. So, because Shuri is going to tell all these guys that Telecons want to go into war, and so like. And like all the guys are just kind of like, oh, the war. I don't think we're gonna fare out too well. But we have Shuri that, of course, has M'Baku, and M'Baku's gonna fight along her side. We have Okoye and all of her people. So maybe at some point in a sequel, like we're gonna actually see that like the Wakandans have like a bigger number than what they really like thought they had. So I don't know, like maybe at some point the Telecons and both the Wakandans are gonna team up together. Maybe there's gonna be a bigger threat somewhere. I don't know. But so we have them rationalize about Nemour and how they are trying to figure out his weakness. And so, come to find out, Nemour needs to not only, like, he's going to be in the surface and fight off anybody, but then Nemour has to go back and retreat to go back into the water and then come back and fight people in the so there's this back and forth that he continues to do, and they start to realize that Nemour like needs to uh have his weakness be that he needs to uh like he needs the water to keep him cool, so they need to heat things up. So they end up figuring out a way to trap Nemour in this uh in one of these ships, and they go on to have Shuri fight Nemour, all while the Wakandans on their transport ship, their like kind of submarine transport ship, they have the Wakandans kind of have these ties, and they're going on to like smack all these fish people off the boat. And I thought that the fight sequences like towards the end here were really pretty cool. I liked them, even though again they were making me think of the Matt Damon movie The Great Wall. So um, we have the at some point the I'm just gonna say it, the Atlanteans. The Atlanteans, because it's so much easier to just have one word of instead of Talicons that just seems stupid. Atlanteans. I'm gonna say the Atlanteans for the rest of the thing. It's freaking easier. So the Atlanteans go on to surround the Wakandans, and we start to see that at some point the Wakandans are all just gonna die. And even though M'Baku may not be like really a part of the Wakandans, still close enough. So we go on to have Shuri, who's fighting Nemour, and again, what's kind of going through her brain, is the conversation that she has with Killmonger, and how the Killmonger was stated. It's like, well, hey, like if you're just gonna fight with revenge, then you should just go on and like have me like fight for you instead of you going on and taking on this burden. And so Shuri is to realize that maybe she's going to think of another way. Maybe instead she's going to go on and realize that like if you're just going to fight for revenge, then like that's just like that's not the way to go. Because we have other people that are going on and telling Shuri, it's like, well, hey, like, if you're going to fight for revenge, it's going to consume you. And Shuri is stating, like, well, I think it already has. So we have Shuri that, like, the ship just kind of crashes, and both Nemour and Shuri are kind of fighting on the surface. And Nemour is just very like gassed at this point. He's just very tired. And so but Nemour ends up taking this, I think it's like a spear, and stabbing it into Shuri's chest. And we assume that Shuri's going to die here. And Nemour is like, well, if it could have gone any other way. So Shuri ends up taking this spear back out, and is to see that kind of Nemour is walking off thinking that he's won. And so Shuri ends up using this like vibranium on her suit to kind of keep her like wounds in check. And so Shuri ends up going on to use her ship, what's left of it, to blast this this like propulsion, or this flame, to then roast Nemour. And Shuri, instead of delivering the last final blow on Nemour. Instead, Shuri is telling Nemour, it's like, well, hey, I can't go on and kill you. I'm not going to. Like, I'm not going to be like my brother and to have killed or let Killmonger to have killed himself in the other film. No, I'm going to find another way. So instead, we desperately have Shuri that tells Nemour to yield to save his people, to yield to uh, save both the Atlanteans and Wakandans from going into this endless war and kill hundreds and hundreds of people. And so Nemour does yield, having both Shuri and Nemour get to another ship where they then call a truce to rush to get back to the transport ship that is holding all the Wakandans attacking or being attacked by all the Atlanteans. And Nemour is to tell his people, hey, like, we figured something out, like, we're calling this off, so, like, stop what you're doing. So all the Atlanteans start all bowing to the Wakandans, and everything seems to be fine. So everything goes back to normal, back to our regularly scheduled story before this all erupted the way it did. So we also had like Ironheart kind of fighting some people in her armored suit. We had for a good while that Ironheart was fighting Nemour until like Shuri was to get her ship, because Ironheart was kind of the decoy for a while until Shuri could go on and get the ship and start fighting Nemour. And so then like Nemour and Shuri had went off, and Shuri had told the ship, like, hey, let's get to a desert somewhere so this guy is really feeling the heat there. Get to, like, the hottest spot of the planet, and so that way this guy could just really dry out. So we... After we've had all this, after we've had all these moments, finally, Shuri, it seems, is to continue, even though she is a princess, she's also to try and turn around and be like the common everyday person. So by the end of this movie, we have Shuri, who is driving around getting hitchhiked to go on to make her way to Nakia's place, because Nakia had mentioned to Shuri that she'll be always welcome there. And we also had a moment where Nakia had finally talked to Okoye, and Nakia had mentioned to Okoye that she had a real hard time going back to Wakanda and going to T'Challa's funeral, and really just like having a hard time without T'Challa really like being alive, being there. Nakia had a problem with going back to Wakanda, realizing that T'Challa was dead. So, Okoye kind of gave Nakia an out of just like, well, okay, like I can understand because you really loved him, and you could not come back to a Wakanda that doesn't have T'Challa in it. So, sorry, like that's just how things went. So, we had Shuri that makes her way to Nakia, and here's where we start to get to like the end credit scene of things. So, the end credit scene goes on and tells us that if Chadwick Boseman was to be the last Black Panther, that was to now like really drastically change things and change the story, and now give us like Shuri as the Black Panther, which I was hoping that we'd really just be focusing on that and having that last a while. Like, I think that we're already finding like a transitional person for the Black Panther, and I'm like, why? Like, as if this is to be now somewhat like the Ant-Man and the Wasp, like Quantumania, how all of a sudden you end up seeing uh like the one girl who is Paul Rudd's daughter, like they grew her up like really quickly to all of a sudden have her be like this teen or this like 20-year-old, and now she's probably going to go on and become her own superhero so she can team up with a number of other uh uh kind of Hawkeye and whoever, and like all those other kind of B superheroes, not the A-list Avenger heroes or whatever, because really they're kind of just B players. Because when looking at it, a number of those kind of characters, and they try to get into their own book, they don't sell very well. They're not an Avenger. They're not a big name, so their books aren't going to sell very well. It just won't happen. So, anyways, back to finishing up the story. So, Anakia brings in a kid by the name of uh, Toussaint, or Toussaint, which I guess is to be like the real name here is to be All Saints. This would be the translation of this name. So, come to find out, Nakia is bringing this kid to Shuri to state to her that this kid is to be T'Challa's son. I'm like, wait a minute. So, we not only have Bruce Banner in the She-Hulk show that all of a sudden is tossing out, hey, guys, look at me, I have a son. Now, all of a sudden, we have Nakia, who now is to state to Shuri that Nakia has a son, and he has a goofy name that isn't easy to pronounce, and we just have a little T'Challa Jr. Okay, alright. So, we're going on and kind of ending with a thing that honestly should not have ended this movie, or even had an opening that sucked just as well. But, so, now we go on, and I guess we had, for T'Challa, who is to have gone on and had, like Killmonger being kind of left out of the Wakanda family. Now we have Nakia that is to have a son that ended up just kind of for the longest time being kind of left out of the Wakandan family, but now we're gonna have this guy come in and possibly become like the throne for being the next Black Panther. Alright? Just, that's how the movie ends. So with that said, I'm going to move my way out of here. Let me know in the comments below if there's anything that I hugely missed about. There's a lot of stuff that I just kind of quickly rammed through because I just didn't like this movie anyways. Plus also, like, I didn't want to rant for this movie for 2.5 hours. And plus also, I'm getting just pretty tired anyways. So, and plus also when looking at it, I'm probably going to look at this movie like I did at No Way Home, and I'm going to realize all the little tiny details that I didn't talk about. But I think overall, I think I covered most of this movie, but still. But with that said, I think I'm just going to go on and get out of here. But yeah, but like, because I probably could go on and do and review like No Way Home all over again, but I don't think I would go on and get anywhere close to any kind of views that I probably did, even the time of which that I reviewed that, but I probably won't get them anyways. So, yeah, because obviously that movie's not trending or anything like that, so it's like, okay, all right, well, uh, for me to have gone on and just re-review that for the sake of re-reviewing it, so I can just state all the things that I forgot about or all the little details or whatever, it kind of bears no real significance or any weight. So, anyways, and plus also, if there's going to be a sequel to that film, which I'm sure that there probably is at some point, like I'm gonna go on and be able to like state all those things that I messed up about or I didn't state. So that's a good thing about rebuttaling. So maybe if there's a ton of stuff that I missed out about this movie, that I can go on and rebuttal from it, and just correct it at some point. But anyways, I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. Let me know how you felt about Wakanda Forever, because I'm sure you probably liked it, and I didn't, because I know that's how everything's gonna go. I am fine with being in the minority of certain things. There's a lot of times where surprisingly I brutally hated a film and everyone loves it. I'm like, well, like I just feel like a piece of crap because I hated this film and everybody loves it. Or I would go on and state like, man, I really loved so and so superhero movie and everyone hates it. I'm just like, man, like why am I in such a minority? But anyways, I'm gonna get out of here. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.